BONAFIDE buffer is an all-analog, high-quality buffer designed to prevent the tonal degradation coming from big pedal boards and long cables, to open the tonal floodgates so that your signal can flow strong and freely through your entire signal chain. Here at TC we love pedals. That probably doesn't come as a surprise. But the more pedals you add, the more cables you have to use, and that can be a problem. The signal coming from a guitar is high impedance, and between that signal and the cables it flows through, a filter is created that rolls off high-end frequencies. The longer the cables, the more high-end roll-off you'll experience. If you ever compared plugging straight into your amp and going through, say, a 20 feet of cable, you have probably experienced the tone suck that many of us guitar nerds are referring to and try to avoid at all cost. A buffer is essentially designed for one thing and one thing only: converting the high impedance signal coming from your guitar to a much more robust low impedance signal, which prevents high-end roll-off. The trick to doing a buffer is not to change the signal from high to low impedance. It's doing so without adding noise or changing the tone or volume of the original signal in any way. The goal is to get the sound of the guitar plugged straight into the amp, regardless of how many pedals you have on your board, and without introducing some other type of coloration to the sound. At best, your buffer shouldn't be heard at all. BONAFIDE buffer is built using high-quality components and features an astonishing 112 dB signal-to-noise ratio and a total harmonic distortion rating of 0.001%, ensuring that what you hear is your original tone in all its glory and nothing else. As with all TC products, we strive to make them as simple and easy to use as possible, and BONAFIDE buffer is no exception. Designed to do one thing only, but do it extraordinarily well, BONAFIDE buffer has no foot switches, no mute function, no tuner out, or some of the other bells and whistles you might find on other buffers. It's just a buffer, and every single component has been carefully selected for one purpose only: creating the perfect buffer. Nothing more, nothing less. We did, however, add one tiny extra feature that could prove a real lifesaver during a gig. Whereas two bypass pedals can pass audio even when they're not powered, all buffers and buffered pedals will cut the sound if they lose power, but not so with BONAFIDE buffer. It features a built-in intelligent bypass relay that automatically switches it from buffer to two bypass if power suddenly gets cut. So, do I need a buffer? And if I do, where should it be in the signal chain? Well, testing a buffer is quite easy. Try plugging straight into your amp and then go through your pedal board. If you notice a difference in tone, then you need a buffer. In this example, we want to demonstrate how long cable runs can really affect your tone and how a buffer can help prevent that. So down below me here, I have a loop switcher, and in loop 1 I've added BONAFIDE buffer, and in loop 2 I have 100 meters of cable. And this allows me to punch in the cable and then afterwards punch in the buffer and see what it does to the tone. So first up, having none of the loops active, that's basically my guitar straight into amp tone. It sounds like this. Now let me add the 100 meters of cable. Pretty obvious, right? And of course this is exaggerating, but it's the same thing that happens when you have shorter cables. It'll just be a little less pronounced. So again, here is with the 100 meters of cable. And now I'm going to add BONAFIDE buffer in front of the 100 meters of cable. Without BONAFIDE buffer. With BONAFIDE buffer. Hopefully you guys can hear it's a massive difference. And the other thing is, when designing a buffer, you obviously got to make sure that it doesn't color the sound in any way. So let's turn off the 100 meters of cable and just hear the difference between directly into the amp and going through the buffer circuit. With BONAFIDE buffer. Without BONAFIDE buffer. Hopefully you guys can hear it's the same. So one little extra thing I want to try to explain here. Up here we have two pedals that are actually in line with the 100 meters of cable. It's two tone print pedals, both set to 2 bypass mode. And one of the issues when you have a series of 2 bypass pedals and long cable runs is that when you don't have any of them active, you're going through the entire length of cable, and that will give you the sound we heard before, which is less than inspiring, to say the least. But the problem is that as soon as you punch in any of the pedals, it starts acting like a buffer, and suddenly you get all that high end back. And obviously the problem is, if this is your core sound, you probably would have adjusted your amp, adding more treble, taking away some of the bass to kind of remedy what's going on here. But as soon as you step on some pedal and makes it a buffer, you bring all that treble back, and now it gets too piercing. So the benefit is that if you add a buffer in front of any of the two bypass pedals you have, you're fixing the problem before punching in any of the pedals, and the problem disappears. So here is the same example with the BONAFIDE buffer, and now adding flashback delay. Now you have the same straight into the amp sound regardless of any pedals you punch in or out. So that's the perfect scenario. What about placement? As a general rule, your buffer should be placed first in the signal chain. That way you have the shortest length of cable before your signal is converted from high to low impedance. There are, however, a few pedals that really like to see a high impedance signal, such as most fuzz pedals. They should always be placed before the buffer. BONAFIDE buffer is the sonic remedy that will free your tone of any treble sucking constraints put upon it by long cable runs. Just place this high-quality, no-nonsense tone tool on your pedal board and get ready to bask in your tone as it was meant to be. Transparent, crisp, alive, and all you.